Just wait on. Beautiful. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Previtt. I am one of the lead faculty for clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. We have 2 courses in our pelvic health curriculum. We have our 8-week online course that goes through everything from pregnancy modifications all the way to return to CrossFit with a focus on teaching you skills for somebody who may not be internally trained. And then we teach the internal assessment in our live course and create the bridge from the internal assessment to return to all those high impact, high intensity movements. And it is just such a fun ride. Our next live course is in Utah. Alexis is going to be leading that course July 30th. So if you're around that area, hope to see you there. Well, I'll see you virtually watching you guys do that course, but super, super exciting. I'm wearing a shirt today that says, "May your squat be strong, but your pelvic floor be stronger." And I thought it was kind of the perfect shirt for, going on in kind of my ethos of life. So we're going to be running those through the Barbell Mamas, and I'm just so excited to see these shirts be printed. All right. So today I thought we would talk a little bit about Diastasis Recti 101. So Diastasis recti gained a lot of popularity or a lot of attention, I shouldn't say popularity, in the pelvic health space. It's in the fitness space. And this is something that may be a very big driver for a person who is pregnant or postpartum to come into your clinic. Avoiding diastasis recti is a big motivating factor for some of our pregnant folks. Making sure that they don't have a persistent diastasis or rehabbing a persistent diastasis is something that people will see you for postpartum. And also, just so you know, it could be diastasis, diastasis. It's one of those tomato type of words. So I'm going to say diastasis, but just know it could be pronounced either way. You're not doing anything wrong. And so we're going to talk about just kind of the fundamentals of what we know around diastasis recti, DRA, and talk about the way that we should be kind of messaging this to our postpartum or pregnant clients. And so just kind of breaking this down to some of the fundamentals. We haven't done a fundamentals episode in a while. So diastasis recti at its most basic form is a spreading or thinning of the linea alba, creating a distance between the 2 rectus abdominis muscles. So that 6-pack line coming down the middle of your stomach, it creates a thinning or a gap that is present during pregnancy. This is not a splitting. This is not a shredding. This is not a tearing. A lot of those words are very, very harmful. If there was a perforation through that fibrous tissue, then we would be dealing with a hernia, which can happen, but in most cases it isn't. And even with respect to hernias, we still want to try and avoid some of that language. So it is a thinning that happens during pregnancy. Diastasis recti is actually a very beautiful evolutionary way that the female body has created in order to accommodate a growing baby. So our bodies within its normal state is not big enough, right? We don't have the space within our abdominal cavity in order to allow baby to grow. And so what our bodies do is it allows this separation of the rectus muscle, this thinning of that linea alba, to create space for our growing baby. With that being said, that means that 100% of pregnancies will result in what we deem a clinically relevant diastasis. And within the literature, 2 centimeters or 2 finger breadths is generally, or an inch, depending on if you're going metric system or imperial. What we're seeing is that it is happening in 100% of pregnancy. So it is not something that we need to be worrying about during pregnancy. And oftentimes, what will be the sign or the symptom that we see is this doming or coning that happens across the midline. And during pregnancy, oftentimes this is a trigger for us to be doing modifications and showing a signal of what our pregnant person's core wall is ready for. We're going to obviously coach first, see if we can start changing some of that pressure management. And then if not, we might be changing the exercise that we're doing just in the short term. Right now, however, we do not have any evidence that exercise or the avoidance of exercise, including of the core wall, is going to protect you from diastasis postpartum. And I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, probably over a month ago now, that was talking about how as a faculty, we've actually been pushing core training. It looks a little bit different in order to try and not decondition the core wall to have a stronger postpartum core recovery. And we've been seeing really positive results. So we don't have any evidence to support that avoiding exercise is going to, of the core wall, is going to create a more strong recovery or a faster recovery of diastasis, or you're less likely to have a persistent diastasis postpartum. So 100% of people during pregnancy. We also see diastasis recti in some of our gentlemen that have more central adiposity, something that they don't worry about. We also see it in our newborns. And then, of course, we see it postpartum. And what these three groups have in common is that there is a lack of strength and integrity across the midline, and that's creating a pressure mismanagement problem, right? And my newborn cannot sit up on their own. And so they are showing this diastasis because they haven't developed the prerequisite strength. If you've had a change in weight with respect to adiposity, again, you maybe don't have the prerequisite amount of strength to do some of your functional ADLs, and therefore you're showing signs of pressure mismanagement, aka doming or coning, when you are doing some of your day-to-day tasks. And then postpartum, we know, especially in the immediate postpartum period, that we're going to see a change in strength because of our sudden change in function, right? We gradually get pregnant over 10 months, and then that baby comes out really quick. Probably doesn't feel that quick in the moment, but baby comes out quick, and then we have to start reestablishing strength and motor control in our postpartum body, in our changed body. And so all of these things are going to be relevant when we start talking about what we know around postpartum rehab. When we think about diastasis recti with respect to treatment, there are certain things that we can say, and there are certain things that we cannot. And this is going to be really relevant when we start thinking about how these programs are being marketed to postpartum people. What we know is that diastasis recti is a weakness issue. So we see decreases in trunk muscle strength, and we see an increase in fatigability of the muscles around the core wall. And that makes sense, right? So we don't have any link between diastasis recti and low back pain. We don't have any link between diastasis recti and incontinence. This is what we had previously been saying. Let's fix your diastasis, and that'll help your pelvic floor. And while integrating core strengthening and motor control and TA bracing, et cetera, is going to help pelvic floor symptoms, the actual diastasis recti, the amount of distance between your two rectus muscles at rest or with function, we don't have any link between those and incontinence. So we have to be careful with what we are claiming. Number one. Number two is that we can create what we have been seeing in the literature being called more of a functional recovery of diastasis recti, versus we don't see that a lot of exercise programs are changing resting tone. That's not to say that they may not be. We just don't have any literature to support that. So when we think about all of the exercises that we're doing to approximate the two rectus muscles, all of these are very active interventions. And we don't want our athletes or our postpartum people to be actively turning on their core all the time, right? That can lead to a whole slew of other issues and concerns. Like we want to let your belly relax. Like we do not need to be doing a brace all day, every day. And so what we know is that we can definitely see a functional change in strength. We can see an increase in approximation of the two rectus muscles in functional activities, and that can create an ability to have an increase in force transfer, heightened athletic performance, and heightened day-to-day performance. Like the ease of which we are doing things, including parenting, which requires a lot of fitness, will go up. We don't have the evidence to support that our programs are going to change resting tone. And we want to set that expectation early. And that can be a hard conversation, saying when they were coming in saying, I want to fix this. It's it's the conversation of, this is what we know we can do. This is what is still a question mark. And I don't want to make promises that resting tone is going to change. And then, 6, 8 weeks or 6 months down the road, you still haven't seen that functional recovery and you're upset about that. Right. Because that's going to lead to a big ding in our therapeutic alliance if we haven't been open and honest about what we know by the literature that we can support is going to change and what isn't. I'm going to be able to get you stronger. I'm going to be able to make your core a lot stronger. It's going to be able to do more things. It's going to make things in your day-to-day life or things in your athletic performance easier. But this is what I cannot make a promise about just yet. This is not what the literature is supporting. And even when it comes to literature on diastasis recti, of course, because everybody is so different, we don't have really strong evidence around the use of exercise for recovery of diastasis recti. And a lot of that is likely due to the fact that they are taking individuals, clumping them all together and putting them in the same exercise program, which is a similar complaint or concern that PTs have when we're looking at exercise interventions in general. And this is no different. And so that is kind of what we know, what we're thinking. And then the third thing is that oftentimes when we're thinking about diastasis recti, individuals will say, well, if you see any doming or coning, then we want you to stop your activity or change your activity, or this is what you're going to change it to. And I have a big concern with that because you never really see unless you are in front of a mirror all the time. And so if you're in a global gym and you have a mirror in front of you, cool. But 99% of my CrossFit athletes are not in front of a mirror when they are doing gymnastics hanging from a bar. So they're going to have absolutely no idea if they are doming or coning. And so we have to try and figure out in the clinic, what is the prescription here? Because saying just look for doming or coning is not a good enough answer because they're not going to be able to know. And if they are looking down, you might actually be artificially creating that because a head lift is how we assess for diastasis recti. So in the clinic, we have to talk about assessment. So when we're thinking about assessment for diastasis recti, oftentimes we're going to do it in supine, in hook crook lying, where we're going down the linea alba. We are starting to look for tensile strength at rest, and we're trying to look for approximation and tensile strength when in a more activated pattern. So you're going to put your hand down the linea alba, assess resting tone. Sometimes you're not going to be able to see the edge or feel the edges of the rectus abdominis at rest. That's okay. Different size bodies, different amount of adiposity, et cetera, is going to change the capacity for you to palpate that at rest. Then you're going to have a person lift their chin up and at your finger starting at an inch above the belly button, you're going to feel for the approximation of the rectus muscles, and you're going to assess for how many finger breaths you're feeling as those two rectus muscles come together. And anything over 2 finger breaths is considered a mild to moderate diastasis. Around 4 fingers is going to be something that's a little bit more severe. And then you're going to get them to come down. You're going to do the same thing at their belly button and the same thing below their inch below their belly button. And then you're going to feel for the amount of spring of the linea alba. Early postpartum, you are not going to feel a ton of bounce back in spring. That is expected with respect to timelines of postpartum healing. But as we go through our interventions, we should feel a little bit more tensile strength start to develop in those active patterns. That is not enough with respect to assessment. That is the gold standard. And that's probably the bare minimum. Then we want to see them doing a bunch of active patterns, active positions, and see what their midline does. This is not to freak them out that they are, doming or coning. This is just to see where their pressure, what their pressure system is ready for, and how we are going to be able to create that bridge from in supine to hanging from a rig. And so in supine, another activity that you can be looking at is looking at the hollow hold. So a lot more core demand, very, very relevant for gymnastics movements. And then for your CrossFit athletes who are concerned about diastasis recti, you need to get them on the rig. You need to get them hanging from a bar. And if you don't have a bar in your clinic, you need them to take videos of them hanging from a bar and then teaching them the strategies of creating a solid TA brace, getting them into that hollow hold and hanging, and then working on their strict strength from there. So assessing all of those movements, hanging, hollow hold, hanging, hollow hold, strict positions, and working on some of the kip swing positions are all going to be a relevant piece to your diastasis assessment if this is something that your athlete is looking to get back to. Doing a supine assessment gives you information, but it doesn't give you functional information about what is relevant for the person that you are working with. And so we want to be thinking about all of those things as we kind of like are conceptualizing our diastasis interventions or plans of care, and make sure that we are touching on all the points of performance that are going to be relevant for your athlete. So looping this back around, diastasis recti, 100% normal during pregnancy. It happens. It is a beautiful way for our bodies to accommodate a growing little one. 2, postpartum, looking for that assessment, we can make promises around functional recovery. We do not have the evidence right now around resting tone. Postpartum expectations is that linea alba tensile strength is going to be weaker postpartum and is going to develop in strength with training and time. We need to make sure that our assessment is not just in supine, we're getting them into functional movement patterns, and then we are really starting to challenge the pelvic floor. We're starting to challenge the abdominal wall, because the data is showing that the variables that are relevant for diastasis recti are related to weakness. And so we can strengthen a weak muscle. We know how to do that. We are very good at doing that. And so that is going to be a relevant piece to our rehab puzzle. All right. Fundamentals, Diastasis 101. I hope I didn't just word vomit too much on you. If you are interested in checking out our Utah course, you can go to ptionice.com. We also have a bunch of courses coming up in the fall of, I'm in Fenton in September, and I'm in Concord in November, and I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in October. I did not do that in the right order. My brain is still in holiday mode. But if you are looking to see us live and learn the internal assessment and that bridge from internal assessment to return to functional fitness, make sure you check us out on ptionice.com. Otherwise, have a very wonderful beginning of your week. And I hope my brain starts to function, and I hope your brain is functioning too. All right. Have a great day, and I'll see you later.